Welcome to the video lesson on project scope definition and scope management. In this video, we'll discuss about the flow and the tools and techniques used for converting the requirements into the project scope. We'll also go through the contents of a project scope document, and we'll also discuss about maintaining the scope, how to maintain the scope throughout the project. Now, what is project scope? The project scope is the total amount of work that needs to be done to complete the project. I'll repeat again. The project scope is the total amount of work that needs to be done to complete a project. So in projects, we have project goals to accomplish, and we accomplish the project goals when we deliver the end deliverables according to the customer's requirements. So as discussed in one of our earlier lessons, the success criteria of a project is time, cost, scope, and achievement of the business case of the project. A project is considered as successful if it is completed on agreed upon time, within budget, and met the agreed upon scope, and it achieves the business case of the project for which it was undertaken. So the total amount of work that needs to be done to complete a project, that is considered as the project scope. Now, to achieve this, we must break down the project into, first of all, we should know the goals the project must accomplish. We should know the deliverables of the project, interim deliverables as well as the end deliverables, and the tasks to be performed to develop these deliverables, and the stakeholder requirements to be met. If we know this many things clearly, then it becomes easy to deliver the scope of the project. Now, importance of the project scope, because once the scope is defined and it is baselined, that becomes the basis for project schedule, that becomes the basis for budgeting, and that becomes the basis for stakeholder satisfaction, and that becomes the basis for the profitability and the accomplishment of the business case of the project. So if the scope is not proper, then the project will fail, or it becomes very difficult to manage it. As discussed earlier, a scope amendment or scope change is easy to manage at the beginning of the project. But as the project progresses, if the scope is considerably changing, then sometimes the amount of rework involved that will eat into the profitability of the project. This is the sequence. First, we collected the requirements. So we started with requirements collection. And once the requirements are collected, it must be analyzed properly because whatever requirements the customer asks for, we cannot deliver. So it must be analyzed. And here we can use affinity diagrams and voting, ROI at a feature level. So all those things, the tools and techniques we discussed in the requirements collection or requirements elicitation video lesson, most of them can be used or some of them can be used here. And after that, we develop a product breakdown structure. So this will give the major components that need to be developed or the major deliverables or the major components that must be developed by the project or within the project. Then we think about the work required to deliver this product breakdown structure. So first we have requirements analysis. Then we do a product breakdown structure. Then we think of what all activities that need to be performed to develop these the components of the product breakdown structure, and we arrive at the work breakdown structure. And once the work breakdown structure is finalized, we develop the scope document, and then we baseline the scope. When we say scope baseline, we spread the scope of the project on a timeline. That means we identify the major milestones with dates and stuff like that, so that we can start monitoring and controlling the progress of the project based on the scope on a timeline. Then as the project progresses, definitely there will be some amount of changes to the scope, or sometimes the team will fail to deliver according to the agreed upon scope. So we need to manage the scope baseline throughout the project. For that, we have to perform scope management starting from the early stages till the completion of the project. Now here is an example of a product breakdown structure or PBS. This is for a project is to make a cycle. Then the major components are frame, wheels, and handlebars. And that gets broken down further into top tube, down tube, seat tube, chain stays, and seat stays, and wheels, front wheel. For that, we have rim, spokes, and hub. Then rear wheel again, rim, spokes, and hub. And handlebar stem, handlebar grip, brake levers, and shifters. So likewise, when you develop, the entire scope of a cycle will be covered by a product breakdown structure. So in its fullest form of expansion, it will cover all the components that goes into a cycle. So these are not activities nor tasks. These are just the components that builds the final product or service of the project. So we call it as a product breakdown structure. So that is the first step. We come out with the product breakdown structure. And once the product breakdown structure is finalized, then we come out with a work breakdown structure. We start thinking on what all activities must be performed to develop these components. Now, at the first level, we have the frame set, crank set, wheels, blah, blah. That gets decomposed further into the next cycle and into the next level of the work breakdown structure. Here, if you see now, project management is an activity. Integration of these components is an activity to be performed to develop the cycle. Then again, integration is coming here. So that is not a component, it is an activity that needs to be performed. Then testing is coming here. Then assembly design is coming here. Then assembly is coming here. So we are superimposing the work breakdown structure with the activities that need to be performed to develop those components, and we arrive at the work breakdown structure. A work breakdown structure has multiple levels. So the bicycle is the level 1. Then we move on to level 2. So this gets decomposed further to a higher level, and that gets decomposed further into the next level. So here we have the level 3. For large projects, by the time we reach level 3 or 4 or 5, we get into manageable pieces. So the lowest level in a work breakdown structure, we call it as a work package. So in this case, at the lowest level, the frame set, in this case, 3 levels are there. So the lowest level frame set is a work package, and it contains this many items. Crank set is a work package. Then wheels is a work package. Braking system is a work package. Shifting system is a work package. Integration is a work package. So the lowest level in a work breakdown structure, we call it as a work package. And at the work package level, we estimate the effort and cost. Because if I estimate at this level, at level 3, then I can add it up and I can add up the cost. So here 7 plus 2, 9 plus 3, 12 plus 3, 15. And that, yeah, if I aggregate it, the total of this becomes the estimate for frame set. So we need not estimate the intermediate levels. We need to estimate only at the work package level, which is the lowest in the WBS or the work breakdown structure. And then we can add it up or aggregate it so that we can work out the interim levels estimates, and the at the project level also we can aggregate and get. So while doing a work breakdown structure, we don't go to the activity level because that is too micro. So we stop at a work package level. So work package is something slightly above the typical activities. To arrive at this, we use a thumb rule called 880 rule. That means work packages should be between 8 hours and 80 hours chunks of work. So we should not go below 8 hours, then it becomes an activity. So work package, minimum 8 hours and maximum 80 hours. For large projects, 80 hour, the affinity of the work packages should be around 80 hours. For smaller projects, the affinity of the work packages should be around 8 hours. So it is not at activity level, it is a slightly higher level. So this 880 rule comes in very handy, because when we really develop the WBS, we don't know to what extent we must decompose the scope. But then 880 rule, at that time, 880 rule comes in very handy, because by the time we touch around 8 hours effort, or maybe 7 or 6, we know that, okay, we have reached the work package level, so that we can stop breaking it further. Now, another rule while doing the WBS is the WBS must cover the 100% of the scope. There should be traceability between our requirements to the product breakdown structure, to the work breakdown structure. Because once the work breakdown structure is defined, we'll be delivering only that. So if there are any omissions, that won't be there in the final product. So we must take enough care to ensure that the WBS represents the complete scope of the project. And once the WBS is completed and approved by the stakeholders, then we can decompose these work packages further into activities. Okay, I hope you understood the multiple levels of work breakdown structure. And we also discussed about 100% rule. We also discussed about 880 rule. And the purpose of 880 rule. We also discussed like what packages are a level above the activities. And by the time a project reaches, while doing the WBS, when we reach around level 3 and 4, we hit the that 880 rule. And 100% rule, we must take enough care to ensure that the entire scope is covered in the WBS, because towards the end, only those items in the WBS will be delivered or included in the project. So if some critical scope is missed out, then we are inviting trouble. Once the WBS is done, then it's a good time to create a project scope document. The typical contents of a scope document are, it will have project goals and objectives, the key requirements, and the project scope description, along with the work breakdown structure. The finalized work breakdown structure, it will be included in the scope document. And then the project scope document can have the time constraints or the timelines for the major components, completion of the major components, the cost at the work package level, and on a timeline again, and the scope. Scope corresponds to the work breakdown structure anyway. And it will have a project scope baseline. That means on a timeline, this is the milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3. So by this time, this much scope will complete. By this time, we'll complete this much scope. By this time, we'll complete this much scope, or the deliverables, so that we can do progress measurement. A good scope document must include the scope exclusions also very, very clearly, stating that we'll deliver these many things and we will not deliver these things. Otherwise, a lot of assumptions will happen, and towards the end, it can lead to customer dissatisfaction. And scope document also can capture the assumptions, the project assumptions we made, and the key project deliverables details and stuff like that. This is tailorable. This is not a standard. So this we can tailor based on the needs of the project. Another key aspect is the scope change management. So we must establish a change management procedure uh, during the planning phase itself. So it starts every change, or at least every major change, starts with a change request, a formal written change request. It can be raised by anybody. That means an engineer can raise it, an architect can raise it, customer can raise it. Any key stakeholder can raise a change request. And we have a change control board, which comprise of experts and decision makers uh, on monitoring and controlling changes. And this change request undergoes an impact analysis. First thing is, if you do this change, what is the impact on schedule? What is the impact on cost? And what are the other impacted items? Is it feasible or not feasible? And based on that, an approval or rejection happens by the change control board. Then sometimes it can lead to a lot of changes, can lead to disputes as well between the contractor and the client, because the client keeps asking for too many changes in scope. Then the contractor will make a loss. If it is a fixed price contract, then the contractor may negotiate for additional money. At that time, sometimes disputes can arise. Disputes can arise because the contractor did not deliver according to the agreed upon scope as well, or it can be because the client is demanding something outside the agreed upon scope. So disputes happen, and maybe we negotiate in good faith and try to resolve those disputes. And if that doesn't work out, then it'll end up in litigation. So this process also must be defined upfront in the during the planning phase. So thank you very much. We discussed about product breakdown structure. We discussed about work breakdown structure, work packages, 880 rule, 100% rule. And we said work packages are the lowest level in the WBS. We also discussed about multiple levels of the WBS, and we said by the time we reach level 3 or 4 or 5, we would reach that we'll meet that 880 rule criteria. And we also discussed about the change management procedure, as well as the contents of a scope document. Thank you.